Hello and welcome to the second of my two videos talking about the latest releases in the Deutsche Grammophon original source series, this wonderful series of vinyl reissues done all analog, cut directly from the master tapes, directly to the lathe. These have been delighting us classical music lovers for the last year, and they're going to continue, and long may they continue. It's wonderful stuff. Today, two really great piano records, one of which, these you should buy both of them, but one of which I think is beyond essential. We're going to get to that in a moment. But let's begin with this record of Mozart Piano Concertos. Now, these are two of the great Mozart Piano Concertos, released originally on a double-sided single LP, but here, as is sometimes the way with these original source series, they've given the grooves extra room to breathe, so each concerto is on its own record, and it's really great that they made this decision. Now, this is a pianist, may not be so well known to many of you, certainly was not a pianist. I was aware of him growing up, but I really wasn't intimately familiar with his recordings. Friedrich Gulda, here accompanied by the great Claudio Abbado conducting the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra, recorded actually in the Musikverein in Vienna, their main concert hall. And what can I say? This is, it's one of those great Mozart Piano Concerto recordings. You've got two very different concertos here. The second one in particular will be known to many of you the moment you drop the needle on the second movement, because the Adagio movement, this beautiful lilting melody, became very famous because it was used in a film called Elvira Madigan, and it's been used since. And this is an absolutely lovely performance. The thing about these performances and about Gulda is he was a jazz pianist as well. So he comes at this from a slightly different angle to many pianists. There's a certain directness, a lack of sentimentality. There's also a clarity, a delineation in the way he actually plays the music. It's not sentimentalized at all. It's more like if you could imagine hearing Bill Evans, for example, playing these concertos, maybe even a Keith Jarrett. It's just a slightly different approach, and no worse for that. This is a really refreshing couple of performances. There was an earlier release in this series of two other piano concertos, and I've actually not heard that record. Reiner's very kindly sent me a test pressing, which I haven't gotten around to listen to. That was actually reviewed by my colleague at Tracking Angle, Michael Johnson, and I'm going to put links to his reviews below for all this new batch of recordings. But I really like this. Now, I will say that common to a lot of Deutsche Grammophon records, the string tone, in particular on the violins, is a little brighter than maybe you would ideally want. There's a feeling of it's slightly just brighter, slightly more isolated. This is a quality with a lot of Deutsche Grammophon recordings. The string sound just can sometimes not sound as woody, as organic as it does sometimes mostly on the Decca recordings and the EMI recordings of the same period. It's not a bad sound, it's just a different kind of sound, and certainly any shortcomings on it on the original LPs are more than mitigated on these re-releases. I actually, when I started listening to this, I thought, oh God, those first violins, they just sound a little bit in my face. And what I did was I just slightly moved my speaker slightly more off axis, just by an inch or something, and it made it much easier to take, but maybe I also had my speakers not set up in the best possible way, more than possible. But it's a lovely performance, and this is a really great record. Look, it's got the usual gatefold, extra photographs. You've got the photographs of the original recording notes, etc., and of course the original insert. again with more archive information. I love the way they package these. It's really great. Is this my first choice in these pieces? On vinyl, maybe. I'm very, very partial to the Alfred Brendel cycle of the complete Mozart Piano Concertos he did for Philips with the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields. I have some of the records on vinyl. I have the whole set on a beautifully remastered CD set. I'm also very partial to the Mari Paraya, but those you do not want to buy on vinyl. You need to get those on CD. You know, it's typical 70s, 80s Columbia Masterworks vinyl, just ugh. I'm sorry to say that. I'm also quite partial to the later recordings, again, purely digital. Mitsuko Uchida did of the complete cycle with the English Chamber Orchestra, Jeffrey Tate conducting. But on vinyl, this is a really good option. And I mentioned just the 21st concerto, but the 20th is also given a phenomenal performance. It's a more Beethovenian, should I say, Beethovenian type of concerto, a little bit more aggressive, shall we say. And I think, you know, the approach that Gulda has here, it fits very well with that concerto in particular, because like I say, he's more objective, he doesn't sentimentalize, and the way he plays the piano is just sort of more direct. Is that the easiest way to say it? It's kind of more like a jazz musician in a way. This is a great set, highly recommended. Now we come to what is the pièce de résistance in this group of releases. I was so excited when I heard this was being released. Actually, Rainer had sent me a very short video clip of him mastering this. So there I was looking at the master tape and the lathe cutting this. And I was so excited because he knew I am a huge, huge Maurizio Pollini fan. Those of you who might be interested, I recorded a video shortly after this great pianist died, covering his whole Deutsche Grammophon catalogue, and you can see that on this channel. I'll put the link below. But this is an essential purchase for so many reasons. I mean, Pollini is simply one of the greats, absolutely one of the greats, a formidable pianist, very much a modernist, both in his choice of repertoire. He would record a lot of modern music. I mean, he did fairly early on, one of his great records was of the piano music of Arnold Schoenberg. That was not a commercial venture in the 70s. His very first, I think, Deutsche Grammophon release, or one of the first, was a coupling of the piano version of Stravinsky's Petrushka with the Prokofiev 7th Sonata, one of the wartime sonatas. The last movement of that, oh my God, it was a musical depiction of Nazi jackboots going through Europe, and his performance was just unbelievable. But as well as being a modernist, he was a famous Chopin interpreter. And as you can see up here, I've also got up his record of the Polonaise, and the other great record that he did of Chopin in these early Deutsche Grammophon days was of the Etude. Now, funnily enough, and I didn't realize this until someone pointed it out on the Steve Hoffman forum, on the interior here, where they show the original documents accompanying the tapes, etc., it actually says here Etude rather than Preludes. So they photographed the wrong material. Oh dear, someone screwed up. Now, that record of the Etude is another one which, you know, we could all very much hope to be released. It was recorded in 72. That's right at the beginning of them doing the 4-track recordings. I don't know if that's available in surround. Also, there's also the question of whether the master tapes are in good condition. There's certainly been a number of records I know they've wanted to re-release, remaster, but the master tapes did not meet Rainer Maillard's exacting standards. But thankfully, this one did. And this is absolutely sensational. The Preludes are basically, it's a cycle of short piano pieces, all in different keys. The original model for this is the Bach Preludes and Fugues, where he wrote a whole series of preludes and fugues in different keys to show off, you know, the different qualities of different keys. And different keys do have a different quality. They just sound different to each other. That's one of the reasons composers write in different keys. But this is an absolutely seminal piece of music in the piano repertoire. When these Pollini recordings first came out, they were hailed. And the thing is, all I can say is when I first put this on, I was on the edge of my seat, because I'm not sure when the last time was that I felt like I was right there at the piano with the pianist. The detail I was hearing in the piano playing, but in the instrument itself, the detail of his touch, it was just uncanny. The actual miking of the piano is superlative, and then there's just enough room ambience to give it room to breathe, and it's extraordinary. Now, I want to talk about this a little bit. It's not the warmest, not the most inviting piano sound. It's a little clinical, some might say. I would describe it as crystalline, and Pollini doesn't use a lot of pedal, and his interpretation is not romanticized. And I'm going to talk about another recording a little bit later as a contrast. But the other factor in this is that Pollini had a very exacting idea of what he wanted his piano to sound like. And he went to great lengths to get exactly what he wanted. He collaborated through all his career with this piano technician called Angelo Fabrini, and together they worked on having a Steinway which was perfectly tuned to Pollini's desire in terms of sound, touch, etc. And it's a brighter sound. The bass is less full. The top sort of glitters, the upper register glitters. There is incredible clarity in the middle register. And I'm going to read you a little something here. I found this online. I was absolutely fascinated by this. But I found this article, which was reviewing a concert that Pollini gave later in his life. But it talks a little bit about this whole situation with the piano. Let me just read you this. Maurizio Pollini's touring Hamburg Steinway Fabrini Concert Grand exhibits exceptionally ravishing tonal and technical characteristics. The fact that this is a piano well outside our modern norm begs a number of questions, amongst which is, why don't we regularly hear instruments of this subtlety and beauty? But first, what goes into the production of a Hamburg Steinway Fabrini Concert Grand? Italian piano technician and entrepreneur Angelo Fabrini from Pescara, Abruzzo, purchases new Steinways from that firm's celebrated Hamburg atelier and subjects them to minute technical fine-tuning, replaces or substantially rebuilds numerous critical action components, and reworks the interaction between strings, bridges, and soundboard. The sound of the rebuilt instruments reminds one of the finest surviving pre-1912 Belüfthner concert grands from Leipzig, and I actually owned a Belüfthner piano myself as I was growing up, and I can attest to there is a certain similarity. And 19th century concert instruments by Mason and Hamlin, the 19th century Boston firm whose pianos were, by a comfortable margin, the highest priced in this country, in the USA. The Fabrini design does not sustain tone for quite as long as these older pianos, and the treble is gleamingly dark rather than the ethereal shimmering silver of the Belüfthner aliquot design. Unlike a standard New York Steinway, in which shadings under mezzoforti can be difficult to control, sometimes even to produce, the Fabrini Steinways offer the easy, wide dynamic range typical of pre-1920 pianos by the great German, American, and Austrian builders. The Fabrini Fortissimo is magnificent, which you will really hear on this recording, but it is not as loud as the brash New York Roar. Its top dynamic reaches are capable of considerable variation, and the tone production can be built up to near orchestral volume without strain. And you're going to hear that in particular. There's a prelude right in the middle of the set. It's sort of a centerpiece. I just can't remember which one it is. It's like number 14 or 15. I think it's the longest of the preludes, and you really hear that because he builds it and he builds it and he builds it. And the tone production can be built up to near orchestral volume without strain. In the course of a celebrity series of Boston concerts at Symphony Hall on April 25th, reviewed here, Maurizio Pollini time and again called forth pianissimo, triple P, and triple F trills in the bottom 2 octaves as effortlessly and clearly as at middle dynamic levels. This is extraordinary, and you do hear it on this recording. Forte in the right hand against piano and mezzo piano in the left became part of this recital's wide dynamic vocabulary. Once an expressive norm for concert instruments, this clear as a bell opposition of dynamic levels is heard infrequently these days. From a purely piano technical perspective, an occasion like this recital lodges in lifelong memory. Mr. Pollini travels worldwide with his Steinway Fabrini. Other Fabrini artists have been Arturo Benedetti Michelangeli, wonderful pianist, several seminal records on Deutsche Grammophon, which I'm hoping I have lobbied for to get the original source treatment, Sviatoslav Richter, and Andras Schiff. Curiously, I heard Richter perform when I was about 13, 14 at school. He came to play, but he was playing a Yamaha piano, and it did not do justice to his extraordinary pianism. Anyway, I just wanted to read you that because that's a really good description of what's going on with the piano sound. It's very, very particular, and it's the Pollini sound. And you are hearing it here, unfiltered. It's so direct. It is so, so thrilling. So, I mean, I've listened to this record several times. It's absolutely stunning. But wow, it's strong. I mean, there are places where his like iron fingers, the control is just extraordinary. I mean, he just throws off these runs as if it's nothing. It's fabulous. Now, I thought, okay, it wouldn't be fair to talk about this unless I just gave at least one comparison. So I went back to my other favored recording on vinyl of the Preludes, which is this one. This is a great recording from Decca made in the late 70s by the great Russian pianist Vladimir Ashkenazy. This was part of his whole series of records that he did of all the Chopin piano music, and really all the Ashkenazy piano records on Decca are worth picking up. They're also available on various CD boxes, but this vinyl sounds amazing. Now, I'm not sure. This is several different works apart from the piano preludes, and it lists a number of the great Decca engineers, including Kenneth Wilkinson. I don't know if he recorded the preludes. It's so interesting to listen to this in comparison to the Pollini. So you couldn't have a more different piano sound. It's that huge, rich Steinway sound with more bottom end. He pedals more. I mean, fantastic technically in the same way, just fingers flying across the keyboard. And this is actually a really good recording. I mean, it's got definitely more warmth than the Deutsche Grammophon, but there's nothing wrong with that with the Deutsche Grammophon. It's a different kind of sound. I wouldn't want to be with either. This is actually a French pressing. I remember when I bought this, I was in Paris, and there was a great record store. There we go, there's the Decca French label. There was a great record store near the Centre Pompidou that I went into, and I picked this up amongst a few other records. So that's a lovely alternative version. It's a more overtly romantic, you could say traditional, big Russian approach to the music. Absolutely enchanting and delightful. But if I had to pick one, it's this. This is such a stunning record, and from a purely audiophile point of view, this has to be heard to be believed. I must confess that several of my favorite of the records in this series have been, for example, the solo Emil Gilels Beethoven disc. A lovely, lovely piano sound. And then I love the Schubert Trout Quintet. Again, wonderful sound. I understand why Deutsche Grammophon have been focusing on the big orchestral records, but I'm really hoping that they will start to do some more of these sort of solo piano, solo instrument, chamber music, because, you know, they come over really, really well. I mean, the recording quality on this is stunning. The original source remastering is stunning. This will give your system a workout. And like I said, I can't think of another record where there's just no screen between you and the player and the instrument. It's like you are right there. You hear every detail of what he's doing with his fingers and the pedal, and it certainly doesn't get in the way of the music. It's all in service of the music, and this is an absolutely stunning interpretation. So there you have it. Apart from the Dvorak, which I'm very sorry to say I found very disappointing, this is another great series in the original source releases. If you go to their website, you'll see that they've actually reissued, not in numbered editions, but they've repressed several of their earlier popular titles. I think it's the Verdi Requiem with Karajan, the Brahms Piano Concertos with Eugen Joachim. If I've forgotten one, I'll just insert it here. And then a record I gave a rave review in Tracking Angle, which is of the Berlioz Symphonie Fantastique, with Seiji Ozawa conducting the Boston Symphony Orchestra. A stunning performance, stunning recording, one of the absolute highlights of the series so far. Now, I also just want to quickly mention that there are more wonderful records coming. I wrote an article in Tracking Angle talking about them. We've got the next batch. We've got Michael Tilson Thomas's stunning recording of Tchaikovsky's First Symphony, which, if you don't know it, you need to get it. There's going to be Carl Böhm's classic recording of the Mozart Requiem. I'm a little more skeptical on that one, but, you know, I'm happy to change my mind when I hear the original source remastering. Not one of my favorite works. And then there are two real orchestral spectaculars. There's the Claudio Abbado coupling of Romeo and Juliet, Tchaikovsky's Fantasy Overture, and, yeah, Scriabin's Poem of Ecstasy, one of the biggest, brightest, brashest of tone poems, symphonic works. Oh, that's so cool. That's going to be with the Boston Symphony. And then the Pièce de Résistance, Karajan's recording of Mahler 6 with the Berlin Phil. I've lobbied hard for this recording since the original source first began, and I'm so excited for this to come out. In fact, my original LP pressing is one of the better sounding DGs of the period. I mean, I still play it. It's absolutely my favorite recording of this symphony. It's one of Karajan's best recordings, full stop. It's certainly, I think, his best Mahler recording, along with the studio ninth and the live ninth. But this 6 is something really special. And they've gone back to the original 8-track tapes, and they had to get, they did a huge mix. They needed 4 tape decks because some of the special sound effects of the church bells and the cowbells, those are all on a separate tape. And it's complicated, and Emil Berliner Studios have made a separate video about that they'll be releasing. And I just wanted to conclude that Emil Berliner Studios is asking you, those of you who buy these records, who listen to them, to submit questions, any questions you like about the original source series, and they will be answering these questions in a future video and doing a drawing to give away free test pressings of some of these records. So I will put their video in here, and also the contact information in the information below this video. Anyway, it's such an exciting time for classical music lovers. The original source series goes from strength to strength. I know about a release that's coming beyond this next batch, which again, I'm just like so excited about, and so should you be. But until the next time, be sure to check out the various articles in Tracking Angle that I've written, that Michael has written, and just keep listening and buying these wonderful records. The more we buy them, the more they'll keep doing them, which is fantastic. It's so exciting that we've got a major label doing all-analog reissues of this caliber, and this stuff has never been available in this sound quality. If you only buy one record from this batch, you've got to buy that Pollini. It's absolutely stunning. Okay, until next time, happy listening and have a great evening.
We have loved following the discussions and reviews about the original Source series, but there are still many questions to be answered and many stories to be told. We've only scratched the surface. Since the success of this project is mostly thanks to you, the audience, we would love to hear from you.
If you have any questions about the original Source series, please send the questions to the email below by November 13th. We are going to create a video to answer them.
The video will be packed with facts about the recordings, the workflow, and the products. As an incentive, you have the chance to win
3 test pressings.
One of 3 test pressings signed by us. We will draw the winners in the first week of December, and you will receive your test pressing by Christmas.
We are looking forward to hearing from you.